So that was kerning and tracking. Now, moving down the list here, let's go ahead and cover leading. And to first understand what leading is, we need to really have a good understanding of what a baseline is. Because as you can tell by the definition written out here, leading is the adjustment of space between two or more baselines of your selected text. So that can go for just a couple sentences, it can go for a paragraph, an entire document for that matter. But let's go ahead and talk about baselines. So I'm going to go ahead and draw out a couple of real quick guides for us here so we can get a visual of what a baseline is. Basically, a baseline is where the majority of your text rests on. So you're going to see, for instance, on that bottom line, the descender of that Y is overshooting that baseline. But without the descenders, everything else rests on what we call the baseline. So when you're adjusting the leading, you're effectively moving that baseline, furthering that gap, or decreasing that gap depending on what your goal is. So let's go to just take a look here. So if I want to increase the leading in this definition that we have written out here, you're going to see that gap widen between each line. And vice versa, if we decrease the leading, everything's going to get a little bit closer together, and you're eventually going to reach a point where it just doesn't look comfortable, you know? In fact, if we keep going here, things are, once again, kind of like tracking, going to begin to overlap. It's just when your manual adjustments are going a little too far, you know? So let's backtrack it just a little bit. Now, while we're talking about leading, we should go ahead and cover what set solid is. You know, set solid gets brought up every once in a while in design. It's a pretty rare circumstance to find yourself in, but sometimes it's beneficial. Set solid is when your point size for your type selection matches your leading. So for instance, my text here is set to 18 points, and my leading is set to 18 points as well. That's considered a set solid selection of type. So here, it would work exactly in the same way if I had this at 20 points, and then I increased my leading to 20 points as well. That's still set solid. Basically, it's when those two numbers match. Sometimes it's helpful if you're trying to get a lot of text in a small area, you know, and there's just no elimination that you can do in your text. You have to have everything that you're given in that particular area. Setting to set solid is really about as far as you want to go. Because if I start taking away from the leading at this point, things are just getting a little too close together. I mean, let's just zoom in here a little bit. The space between that P and the T is getting obnoxiously close. You know, that doesn't look helpful at all. So that would be a circumstance where you want to go ahead and increase the leading. Ideally, I would probably have the leading usually about 2 or 3 points above what my font size is. Alright, so now some real world examples of leading. So you're going to see in this document I have open right now, this was actually a booklet slash brochure that I had put together for Portland Center Stage in their 2015 schedule. So, and by the way, if you're not familiar with all of these like bleed lines and color bars and registration marks and stuff, this is really common things to have on your finished print files. So get used to seeing them. You know, they show up a lot of times when this is ready to go to the printer and it's going to start hitting production. But really, we're talking about the right page that you see in this window. And that is particularly 2015 in schedule. You know, I had to do a lot of leading adjustment in order for schedule to be that close to 2015. Normally there would have been a huge gap in between those two lines of text, but I had to go in and do quite a bit of manual adjustment to get the effect you see there. And same with Portland Center Stage, the title of the document at the top. You know, I had to do quite a bit of leading adjustment there as well to get center to rest on that red bar. So that just goes to show leading is a really helpful adjustment that you can make as a designer, and it gives you kind of cool ending results in your design work. So you just saw Portland Center Stage. Now, obviously, I'm in Portland, and a huge company out here is Nike. So I had to pull up an example from them as well. This is a classic thing that Nike likes to do with their shirts, is have the lettering so tight on their graphic tees that the text actually rests on top of one another. So no pain becomes one individual silk screen, you know, and it's actually one block of color basically at this point. Same with no gain, you know, they're attached. And that's a really cool effect that you can have with your typography when you're finished with it. And that's all achieved by just simply adjusting the leading on your document.